Welcome back to our English listening practice. Today we have a brand new mystery story called The Shadow in the Gallery. Keep your ears open for important clues because we will have 5 comprehension questions at the very end to test your vocabulary and memory. Let's begin. It was a beautiful, hot Sunday afternoon at the Grand Oak Gallery. The sun was shining brightly through the massive glass skylight in the ceiling. The gallery was usually crowded, but today it was closed to a but today it was closed to the public for a private exhibition. The owner, Miss Helen Vance, was showing 3 wealthy guests her most prized possession, a 500-year-old painting called The Golden Sunset. Suddenly, at exactly 3 p.m., the lights in the gallery went completely out. The room became pitch black. There were loud gasps, heavy footsteps, and the sound of a velvet curtain falling. Exactly 2 minutes later, at 3:02 p.m., the emergency lights flickered back on. Everyone looked at the main hall. The guests gasped in horror. The golden sunset was gone. Someone had neatly cut the canvas out of its beautiful golden frame. Fortunately, Inspector Thomas was already in the neighborhood and arrived at the gallery within minutes. He locked the heavy front doors so nobody could leave. The inspector looked up at the skylight. The sun was still beaming into the room. He examined the empty frame and noticed that the thick velvet curtain next to the painting had been pulled completely down to the floor. Then he turned to interview 3 guests who were in the room during the 2 minutes of darkness. First, the inspector spoke to Mr. Oliver, a famous art collector wearing dark sunglasses. "Where were you standing when the lights went out, Mr. Oliver?" The inspector said, Inspector Thomas. Mr. Oliver sighed and adjusted his glasses. "I was standing right near the entrance, Inspector. When the lights went out, I stood completely still. I was too afraid to move because I have terrible vision in the dark. I didn't see or hear a thing until the lights came back on." Next, the inspector questioned Professor Charles, an elderly history professor holding a thick leather notebook. Professor Charles looked very calm. "I was standing near the back wall, inspecting a classic Greek statue," the professor explained. "When the darkness hit, I accidentally dropped my heavy notebook on my foot. I spent the entire 2 minutes on my knees searching the floor to find it. It was incredibly painful and frustrating." Finally, Inspector Thomas interviewed Miss Eleanor, a young photographer who had a heavy camera hanging around her neck. "What was your experience during the blackout, Miss Eleanor?" the inspector inquired. Eleanor looked shaken. "I was standing right in front of the golden sunset, taking a photo," she said. "When the lights went out, I was terrified. I turned around and ran directly towards the emergency exit doors. But the doors were locked, so I just waited there until the lights returned." Inspector Thomas slowly walked around the room, processing their statements. He looked at the heavy velvet curtain lying on the floor. Then he looked at the bright, hot sunshine pouring through the glass ceiling. He looked at the suspects' faces. A sharp glint of understanding flashed in the detective's eyes. "One of you is lying," Inspector Thomas declared, and your alibi has exposed you. The inspector stepped forward and pointed directly at Mr. Oliver, the art collector. You did not stay by the entrance, Mr. Oliver. You are the thief. Mr. Oliver laughed nervously. That is ridiculous, Inspector. I told you, I have terrible vision in the dark. How could I possibly cut a painting out of a frame in total pitch blackness without ruining it? You didn't need to see in the dark, the inspector explained. Before the lights went out, you noticed the heavy velvet curtain next to the painting. You pulled the curtain down to block the bright sunshine coming from the skylight. But why? Because you were wearing very dark sunglasses in a bright gallery. You realized that when the main lights went out, the sunshine from the ceiling would still make the room bright enough for everyone to see you steal it. You pulled the curtain to make sure the room was completely dark, but you forgot that the sun would have given you away. Inspector Thomas stepped closer to Mr. Oliver and reached inside the man's long winter coat. From a large internal pocket, the inspector pulled out a neatly rolled up canvas, the golden sunset. The other guests gasped in shock. Mr. Oliver dropped his head in defeat and took off his dark sunglasses. I just wanted it for my private collection, he muttered quietly. Miss Helen Vance thanked Inspector Thomas profusely for saving her gallery's masterpiece. The front doors were opened, and the police arrived to take Mr. Oliver away. Peace was restored to the Grand Oak Gallery. Once again, a clever criminal was defeated by a simple law of nature. Thank you for listening, and let's move on to our questions. What was the title of the 500-year-old painting that was stolen from the gallery? The painting was called The Golden Sunset. At what exact time did the lights go out, and how long did the darkness last? The lights went out at 3:00 p.m., and the darkness lasted for exactly 2 minutes, until 3:02 p.m. What did Professor Charles claim he was doing on the floor during the blackout? He claimed he dropped his heavy history notebook on his foot and spent the time on his knees searching for it. Why did the thief feel it was necessary to pull down the heavy velvet curtain before stealing the painting? Because the sun was shining brightly through the glass skylight. If he didn't block the sun, the room would still be bright enough for people to see him steal the painting when the electricity went out. Where did Inspector Thomas find the stolen canvas hidden at the end of the story? He found it neatly rolled up inside a large internal pocket of Mr. Oliver's long coat. How many questions did you get right? Let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe for more daily English lessons. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.